of the last football season, brought to you by the United States Army and the National Football League. We're going to give you a close-up look at some of the teams and some of the plays and some of the players that kept millions of fans glued to their TV sets. You're going to see what makes football the great game it is. Superb individual effort, teamwork, spontaneous action, plus the ability to spot the breaks and take advantage of them. So make yourself comfortable, and let's go to the game.
In Yankee Stadium during the 1971 season, New York Giant fans had to endure a record of 4 wins and 10 losses. But the 72 season brought new hope. Hope which sprung from the fact that there had been many changes made by head coach Alex Webster. An off-season trade with the Minnesota Vikings had brought quarterback Norm Snead to the Giants, and he was only one of many new starters. Number 72, Joe Taffoni, was new protection up front, as was Dick Enderle. On defense, Jack Gregory came in a trade. John Mendenhall was a rookie starter, and Pat Hughes became a starter at linebacker. Richmond Flowers moved into a starting role, as did number 45, Pete Athas, who was joined by number 43, veteran Spider Lockhart, and Willie Williams. Ron Hornsby and Jim Files were veteran but young linebackers, and Henry Reed was up front on defense. Willie Young, Greg Larson, and Doug Van Horn made a veteran offensive line, along with Bob Tucker, the Giants' record-setting tight end. Veteran receivers Don Herman and Rich Houston gave the offense some sparkle. Running back Charlie Evans gave it punch, and Ron Johnson, who had returned from injury, gave the offense an all-important game breaker. And so it was that Coach Webster began the season with a blend of old and new faces, a team much changed by trades and changed by reserves who had won starting roles. And if no one knew exactly what to expect, one thing was sure. It was up to the 1972 New York Giants to become a contender. On opening day in Detroit, the Giants came up with some big plays as Rocky Thompson rocketed 92 yards for a touchdown. But the offense just couldn't generate any heat when it came to putting a drive together. Mistakes and broken plays were costly and added up to a 30-16 loss.
Number 22, Rocky Thompson, put the Giants back in the game with a 92-yard burn to touchdown city.
The Dallas Cowboys came to Yankee Stadium for the Giants' home opener. Norm Snead and wide receiver Rich Houston went up top in a big way as they connected on 5 passes for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Houston's second score came on a 94-yard speed burner. But with the Cowboys holding the lead, the Giants couldn't come up with the one break they needed to turn it around. And Dallas went home with a 23-14 victory, while the winless Giants pondered their problems.
Rich Houston livened up a dead day for the Giants once he turned a routine post pattern into a 55-yard touchdown. Then Houston climaxed the day by burning Dallas deep and flat out beating safety Cliff Harris to the end zone. But the 94-yard touchdown was little consolation to the Giants as Dallas won its second straight 23-14.
Then in Philadelphia, before a Monday night national television audience, the team began to gel. Every time the Eagles threatened, the defense cut them down. Meanwhile, the New York offense was cutting down some records as Ron Johnson scored 4 touchdowns for an all-time Giants mark. He also rushed for 124 yards, and his combined running and receiving attempts totaled an NFL record 41. The 27-12 win was a big one, and it sent the Giants on their way. With New Orleans in town, the Giants had to stop the Saints quarterback Archie Manning. Number 81, Jack Gregory, made Archie his personal quarry as he harassed and battered him, giving the defense 11 sacks for 4 games of the season. The constant harassment was intimidating, and Archie began to misfire. Number 24, rookie Chuck Christ, came up with one big theft. Richmond Flowers' diving interception gave the Giants 4 for the day. And while Norm Snead complimented the defense off the field, he also made it worth their while when the offense took over. He hooked up with Don Herman, who made a super scoring catch. Then it was number 27, Bob Grimm, another addition from the Viking trade. Then, off the bench, came the aging one, Joe Morrison, whose every appearance in a New York game set a record for most games played as a Giant. Joe's long gainer began what number 31, Charlie Evans, finished. Evans scored 3 big touchdowns as the Giants ran amok over the Saints 45-21. But even more importantly, both the offense and the defense had proved they were ready. And coming up was a very big game with the playoff-bound 49ers.
In Yankee Stadium, the surprisingly strong New York Giants battled the New Orleans Saints. The Giants have become a young team in recent years, but no team is younger than the Saints, whose roster includes 25 members with less than 3 years pro experience. The Saints are building for the future, and if it's true that a team learns from its mistakes, then New Orleans got quite a lecture on this day. The Saints fumbled 4 times and lost 4 interceptions, as mistakes led to 4 of 6 Giant touchdowns. On the Saints' first possession, a bad snap on 4th and punt gave the Giants field position on the New Orleans 13. Norman Snead, number 16, led the NFC in passing going into the game, and he began a day that would help his position by hitting Charlie Evans, number 31, swinging out of the backfield. On the Saints' second possession, an interception on their own 37 led to a field goal. And on their third series, Saint head coach J.D. Roberts saw his young team give the ball away again. A fumble gave New York possession on the Saints' 24. On the very next play, Evans went around right in, and the Giants led 17-0. In the second quarter, Saint mistakes continued unabated as a pass to Dave Parks, number 83, went through his mitts, and Richmond Flowers, number 44, came up smelling like roses. This turnover led to Evans' third score of the first half, this time on an 8-yard run. Only once did the Giants drive for a score in the first half. 35 yards of an 80-yard drive were gained on a sneak pass to Don Herman, number 85. Herman's catch and carry led to a short Ron Johnson TD run and a 31-0 Giant lead. In the second half, after still another Saint turnover, Herman got a touchdown of his own. But the turnover tournament was not over. On the Saints' first possession of the second half, an Archie Manning pass was swiped by number 41, Willie Williams. But Williams' ad-lib wound up right where the play had begun, back in Manning's glad hands. But the play had given the Saints poor field position, and after a punt, Snead threw his third touchdown pass of the day, a 15-yarder to Bob Grimm, number 27. At one point, the Giant lead had ballooned to 45-7. The Saints' 7 had come with 17 seconds left in the first half when Manning scrambled long enough to spot Parks for a 66-yard score. The Saints were never really a threat in the game, but they gained some measure of respect with two fourth-quarter scores. Danny Abramowitz, number 46, gained 40 yards before being helped down by teammate Joe Williams, number 24. Abramowitz's run set up a second Manning to Parks touchdown pass, and Abramowitz scored one himself on a deflection from 16 yards out. The Saints had scored last, but it was the Giants who had the last laugh with a 45-21 victory. And the Giants at 2-2 are only one game out of first in their division.
With 2 wins in a row, it was now time to find out if the Giants were for real. And the 49ers provided the test. Right from the start, the Giants' special teams met the challenge, with number 83, Tom Gatewood, and number 41, Willie Williams, doing the ball hawking. Although Willie's score did not count because the play was ruled dead, it did set up Ron Johnson's score, which was ruled good before the fumble. But the 49ers came back to tie the game at 10 apiece. On the next play, Rocky Thompson sped upfield for 75 yards to set up a Pete Gogolak field goal and a 13-10 Giant margin. But again, San Francisco came back to regain the lead. Then the New York defense, led by number 75, Larry Jacobson, Jack Gregory, and number 71, Dave Tipton, smothered Brody and the 49er attack. Number 80, Henry Reed, and number 64, John Mendenhall, kept the pressure on, and finally, Brody broke. Late in the fourth quarter, Pete Athas intercepted. But now the Giants were fighting the clock and the 49ers. 6 times Norm Snead handed off to his runners, and 6 times they bowled goalward behind brilliant blocking. Then with 1:34 left, Charlie Evans sliced in to give the Giants their 3rd win in a row, 23-17. It was a pressure-packed victory that put them in contention in the NFC East and proved that this team was for real.
The New York Football Giants were in San Francisco for the first time since 1960, when Alex Webster was a Giant running back and Dick Nolan was a Giant defensive back and Pat Summerall was the Giant place kicker. None was as fast as number 22, Rocky Thompson. Oh, it was a little damp in San Francisco, but Thompson's 75-yard return set up a Pete Gogolak field goal. Another kickoff had even stranger results. Vic Washington was hit by, of all people, Pete Gogolak. Willie Williams picked up the loose ball and took it in for an apparent touchdown, but the play had already been blown dead by what was later termed an inadvertent whistle. Sorry about that, Willie. Williams' lost touchdown was equalized somewhat when Ron Johnson was ruled over the goal line before he fumbled to Bruce Taylor. In all, there were 8 official fumbles in the game. This one from Charlie Evans to Johnny Fuller set up a 49er field goal. Despite all the fumbles and weird play on Candlestick's soggy carpet, there were flashes of the way the 49ers used to play football. Twice, John Brody hit Gene Washington for touchdowns. Washington now has totaled more than 3,000 yards and receptions in just over 3 years in the league. The sun came out for Brody's second touchdown pass, and everything looked rosy for the 49ers, who led 17-13 with 6.5 minutes left to play. Pete Gogolak's third field goal cut the lead to 1 point, and then came the biggest play of the game. 49er receiver Preston Riley fell down, and Giant cornerback Pete Athas had an easy interception. With only 1:34 to play, Norm Snead handed to Charlie Evans, and suddenly the Giants led 23-17. Alex Webster, Dick Nolan, Pat Summerall, and all those guys I used to play against would have known how to celebrate a big win. Charlie Evans and the new Giants might need a little more practice. With only 38 seconds left, Brody dropped back to pass for the last time. An ankle injury forced Brody out, and it was Steve Spurrier who threw the last pass of the game. Pete Athas had his second interception and the only 2 in the game. More important, the Giants had won their 3rd straight and now are only 1 game behind in the NFC East.
In the 6th week of the season, the Giants came home to face the St. Louis Cardinals. In the first half, the Giants were sluggish, and St. Louis went ahead 21-7. The lone Giant score by Charlie Evans wasn't enough to exactly keep the New York fans on the edge of their seats. But in the second half, the Giant defense came out smoking. Taking his cue from the defense, Norm Snead continued his NFC-leading 66% accuracy. Giants 14, Cardinals 21. Then a great play by Spider Lockhart tied it up. It brought the Giant faithful out of their seats. The New Yorkers continued to pour it on. All gears were meshing now, and the Cardinals were about to go under. Twice, New York moved to within field goal range, and twice, Pete Gogolak connected. Giants 27, Cardinals 21. Then it was up to the defense. With their 18th sack of the season, equaling all of 1971, they wrapped up a great come-from-behind victory which put their streak at 4. A streak that was due in great measure to a New York Giant defense that had gone out and knocked people down and would continue to do so throughout the season. In the 7th week, it was the Redskins, and for Coach Webster and the Giants, stopping Washington's Larry Brown meant a tie for first in the NFC East. But it was not to be, as a New York score was nullified by a penalty. Then came a controversial stolen ball play with the call favoring the Redskins, who turned the play into 6 points for Larry Brown. Courageously, the Giants fought back as time ran down. But Bob Tucker's score came too late in a loss that put them 2 games behind in their division.
At the start of the game, the Redskins' dreams also seemed to falter as the surprisingly competitive New York Giants forced mistakes. The fumble that Willie Williams caused was recovered by Pete Athas. And twice in the first half, Norm Snead drove the Giants in close for field goals with clever play calling like this circle and go to Ron Johnson. Snead put the Giants across with less than 2 minutes remaining, hitting Bob Tucker with a 10-yard touchdown, making the final score Redskins 23, Giants 16. And in still another game, the difference between 2 teams was measured by the size of Larry Brown's heart. Number 43 shredded the Giants for 191 yards rushing. But beneath the gloss, the story of the game is the story of 2 men, Larry Brown and Sonny Jurgensen. In their personal triumph and tragedy, there's the heart and soul of a sport.
Now every game was crucial if the Giants were to stay in contention. The Denver Broncos came to town and found a ball-hawking defense that made the breaks for the high-powered offense. Although early in the game, Charlie Evans was lost for the season, number 49, Joe Orduna, came in at fullback and played well out of position until Vince Clements was ready later in the season. Again, the defense was a swarming, relentless pack of tormentors that forced mistakes. Mistakes like this one that Jim Files turned into 6 points. Norm Snead continued his great passing streak as his completion percentage stayed at 65. Ron Johnson put the finishing touches on the 29-17 victory. A big win for the Giants because the following week, it was to be the Redskins again.
Bolting out of the pack came old number 16 as Norm Snead and the Giants looked for victory number 5 against the Denver Broncos. Right from the start, the old general cranked it up and let it fly. Unfortunately for Snead, Rich Houston was just a fingertip from 6 points. Undaunted, Norman kept on firing, but the Broncos hung tough as Charlie Greer picked Bob Tucker's pocket clean and stole the ball. Finally, Snead solved the Bronco defensive riddle with some sleight of hand to tight end Bob Tucker. Then Snead connected with Tucker in a more conventional manner, and the big tight end turned a 3-yard pass into a 32-yard gain. Another newfound ally was tough-running Joe Orduno, number 49, who replaced injured running back Charlie Evans. Orduno's roughhouse style netted him 6 points when he soared over the stacked Bronco defense. The Giant defense furnished the third touchdown when Jim Files snatched away a pass from Bobby Anderson and raced to a 19-0 Giant lead at the half. Four men had a hand in Denver's first score as the ball went from Steve Ramsey to Floyd Little to Bobby Anderson to completely forgotten Riley Odom's number 88. But the Giants rebounded smartly when Snead hooked up with Ron Johnson, who barely held on long enough. The beaten Broncos saved their best for last as Floyd Little rocked and socked to a 55-yard touchdown. But Little's individual brilliance was not enough to stave off the Giants, who won their fifth game 29-17.
For the second time in 3 weeks, the Giants were faced with a must-win over the Washington Redskins. And they came up with some big plays, such as the 77-yard kickoff return by number 18, Eldridge Small. Billy Kilmer, who had been sacked only 6 times all year, was dumped 3 times by the defense. But once again, the inches and the breaks went the other way, and so did the score as Washington triumphed 27-13.
Fans did have moments of anxiety in a game that was wild right from start to finish. Many plays for both teams ended up being something other than what they started out to be. And sometimes the game itself ended up being something other than what it started out to be. But in the end, certain points remained constant.
Still in contention for a wild card playoff spot, the Giants traveled to St. Louis, where Ron Johnson did some traveling of his own, 123 yards on 22 tries. Bob Tucker set a club record with receptions in 33 consecutive games. And Norm Snead kept firing right on the money as the Giants took a 13-7 lead. A new hitter emerged in number 51, linebacker John Douglas, who, with 58, Jim Files, led the defense as they stopped the Cardinals in an important short yardage situation that ended the game and put New York back on the right track.
Home has not been a happy haven for the St. Louis Cardinals this past while. But after 8 straight defeats in Busch Memorial Stadium, the Cardinals felt they had a chance at last as the New York Giants stumbled into town. Giant ineptitude and some frustrated Cardinal hitters held New York to a lone field goal through 3 quarters, while the meager St. Louis offense managed to muster up 7 points on a screen pass to number 23, Johnny Rowland. Rowland's score gave promise of a happy homecoming at last. But then the New York defense barged in uninvited on number 15, Gary Cuozzo. The Giant defense took the ball away, and number 30, Ron Johnson, put some life back into the New York attack. Ron Johnson motored for 134 yards to help set up a second Charlie Gogolak field goal. Then trailing 7-6, Norm Snead hit tight end Bob Tucker twice on a last-minute drive to the Cardinal goal line. Tucker's second effort set up Johnson's 1-yard game winner, and the hapless Cardinals ended up with yet another reason to stay out of town.
When the Philadelphia Eagles came to New York, they ran into an offensive dreadnought that chewed them up. Every aspect of the offense and special teams rolled with power. Number 29, Vince Clements, who came in the Minnesota trade, exploded on the New York scene. And the New York offense rolled on. Bob Tucker scored twice, and number 11, Randy Johnson, came in and hit Don Herman for 2 touchdowns. New York's 62-10 rout was the most points ever scored by a Giants team.
In New York, the Giants' football flag was flying as high as their hopes for a divisional playoff berth. And last week, they continued to fly far above the down-gliding Eagles, who were destined to face 60 minutes of a determined Giant offense. From the start, it looked as if the Giants would run roughshod over the Eagles as Joe Orduña, number 49, almost broke this kick return. Only a diving tackle by Eagle kicker Tom Dempsey, number 19, saved a possible touchdown. The thundering Giants first scored on a pass from Norman Snead, number 16, to tight end Bob Tucker, number 38. Then Eagle turnovers led to further Giant tallies. Willie Williams, number 41, picked off a John Reeves throw, while 3 Philadelphia fumbles further shot down the Birds. The Giants capitalized, scoring on 6 of their first 7 possessions. On this one, Ron Johnson, number 30, crashed 35 yards for 7. Joe Orduña's hard-hitting running, typical on this day of the New York offensive team, brought the Giants close again. His running set up another Snead to Tucker touchdown, their second hookup on what was fast becoming Norm Snead's field day against his ex-teammates. Safety man punt returner Pete Athas, number 45, was lost to the Giants by injury, but set up yet another score with a scampering 48-yard run before he left the game. It seemed the Giants could do no wrong. By now, substitute quarterback Randy Johnson, number 11, had assumed field duties. His pass to substitute running back Vince Clements, number 29, was tipped in the air. But Clements scooped it up and ran for a 29-yard gain. Although they didn't try to roll up a big score, the Giants repeatedly converted what seemed like routine short yardage plays into scoreboard tallies. In the second half, Johnson connected twice with Don Herman for touchdowns on what were meant to be short gainers. The only bright spot for the Eagles came on a John Reeves bomb to Harold Jackson. It was the lone Philadelphia touchdown of the afternoon. Swift Harold retained the NFL receiving lead, his team notwithstanding, and now has accumulated over 900 aerial yards. The final score was 62-10, and no coach likes to roll up such a margin of victory. Alex Webster was not the exception, as he extended his apologies to Ed Kayak. And there were no hard feelings as the two men commiserated. Coach Webster thought ahead to playoff possibilities, and why not? With a 7-4 season record and the kind of explosive offense shown last week, the high-flying Giants may yet roll to a playoff position.
The Giants were now in a must-win situation in Cincinnati. Only a victory would keep their playoff hopes alive. The Giants gave it their best shot as Ron Johnson raced for 119 yards to go over 1,000 yards for the season and to break his own club record. However, when the Giants couldn't score, Randy Johnson came in at quarterback and led the faltering offense on one touchdown drive. But in the closing minutes, as New York drove for the winning score, they were intercepted. A theft that cost them the game and ended their playoff hopes.
When the Giants invaded Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium last week, they had not yet cooled from their torrid 62-point spree of the week before. And both teams needed victories to stay in contention. New York's Ron Johnson was closing in on his second 1,000-yard rushing season, and on this play he surpassed that magic number on his way to 119 yards for the day. While Johnson packed most of the punch for the Giants, quarterback Ken Anderson was the big gun for the Bengals. 17 times Anderson connected, 5 of them to 6'5" Chip Myers. The game's most spectacular pass play came when Anderson scrambled until he found 6'6" Bob Trumpy, number 84. Unfortunately for Anderson and Trumpy, a penalty nullified the touchdown. But undaunted by his ill fortune, Ken Anderson kept coming back for more. Once again, a spectacular score was negated by a penalty, and Ken Anderson could be forgiven for thinking he was snake-bit. Anderson's New York counterpart, Norm Snead, suffered ill fortune of a different kind. 3 times the Bengals intercepted, 2 by number 52, Doug Adams, who had replaced the injured Bill Berge at middle linebacker. Ken Anderson's luck finally held long enough to get the ball to tight end Bruce Coslett in the end zone before any yellow flags could fall. And after 3 quarters, Cincinnati led 13-3. Midway in the 4th quarter, number 11, Randy Johnson, finally got the Giants moving with a pass to his tight end, Bob Tucker. With 4 minutes to play, Johnson brought the Giants to within 3 points when he found Don Herman open in the end zone. With 2 minutes left, Randy Johnson had one last shot at a victory. But his pass intended for Bob Tucker was cut off by Tom Casanova, and the Giants' playoff hopes were dashed 13-10. At 7-5, the Bengals were still alive and hoping.
The undefeated Miami Dolphins visited Yankee Stadium in the 13th week of the season. And despite the fact that they were out of contention, the Giants never let down. Vince Clements continued to be a powerhouse runner as he gouged out tough yards. Norm Snead and Bob Tucker continued as the Giants' top passing combination. At this time, Norm was second in passing in the NFC. Bob was second in receiving. Meanwhile, the offensive line of Joe Toffoni, Willie Young, Greg Larson, Doug Van Horn, and Dick Enderle kept Norm Snead safe as he led the offense for a total of 352 yards against a vaunted Dolphin defense. The offensive line, which allowed only 10 sackings of Snead all year, a league low, twice opened huge holes, and Ron Johnson glided through to score. But in key situations, the Giants and the ball were inches apart. Although the Dolphins came out ahead 23-13, they knew they'd been in a game with a team that deserved to be called a contender.
But victory number 13 didn't start out too well as Norm Snead's pass to Don Herman put the Giants on the Miami 1, from where Ron Johnson took it in. The extra point was blocked, and New York led 6-0. The winner, 38, tight end Bob Tucker, a rugged performer all season, put the Giants in close, but they fumbled on the next play to kill the drive. The Giants countered with number 29, Vince Clements, who has come into his own in the latter part of the season. Number 30, Ron Johnson, the Giants' 1,000-yard rusher, crashed in to give New York the lead.
New York went to Dallas to meet the playoff-bound Cowboys in the season's finale. And it was a day that should make every Giants fan look forward to 1973. Jack Gregory finished the season with 21 sacks, and the defense finished with 37, as opposed to the 18 in all of 1971. Number 56, Pat Hughes, intercepted one pass to add to Spider Lockhart's and Willie Williams' interceptions, as all the starting Giants defensive backs ended the season with 4 thefts apiece. Vince Clements blasted for over 100 yards as he and Larry Jacobson and Norm Snead, all obtained in the trade with the Vikings, were standouts in the Giants' triumph over Dallas. It was a great ending to an unexpectedly good 8-6 season, a win that promises much for the future.
Before the game, Alex Webster and Tom Landry had a friendly chat. Then the whistle blew and Alex unchained his Giants, and the ball-hawking big city boys devoured every loose ball. The old coast-to-coast combination of Craig Morton to Bob Hayes ran afoul of free safety Spider Lockhart's meticulous timing. In the early going, quarterback Norm Snead's impeccable generalship fell prey to Rich Houston's fickle fingers. Undaunted, Snead eye-faked Cowboy safety Cornell Green, number 34. Green went one way while Snead delivered a perfect pass to Ron Johnson for a touchdown. Airtight protection allowed Snead to riddle the notoriously porous Cowboy secondary. The Cowboys were forced to blitz, and Snead dropped a pass over number 52, Dave Edwards, to Rich Houston, who beat Charlie Waters for a score, and New York led 20-3. The sleepwalking Cowboys sparked to life when Charlie Waters stole a Snead pass intended for Houston. Waters seemed on his way to a certain score when Houston burned up to catch him. The stunned Cowboys were never able to register a touchdown, even with Roger Staubach at quarterback. Roger's arm was willing, but his instincts were bad, and the airtight Giant secondary, led by Willie Williams, number 41, snapped shut on his home run throws. Williams palmed the ball like it was a grape as New York showboated past the playoff-bound Cowboys. The Dodger was never able to escape the relentless pursuit of number 81, Jack Gregory. And by game's end, the Giants wrapped up Dallas neatly and won a convincing 23-3 victory.
And so in 1972, the Giants had taken their best veterans, sprinkled heavily with newcomers, and come up with a winner. They'd come up with Norm Snead, who finished first in the entire NFL in passing, and an offense that finished first overall in the NFC. Bob Tucker had another record-setting year and finished second in receiving in the NFC. The running game had flourished with Orduna, Charlie Evans, Ron Johnson, and rookie Vince Clements. The defense had come up with the big plays. As well as the big play, the defense had come up with the hitters. In 1972, the New York Giants had started as an unknown quantity. And in the end, they had fulfilled a promise. They had become a contender. The big win over Dallas in the last game points to an even brighter future for New York fans, because in 1973, the Giants' goal won't be to become a contender, but instead, it will be to become a champion.
When you see a game on TV or at the stadium, you see professional athletes being professionals. But you don't see the sweat and bruises in training, the self-discipline, and the motivation that goes into the making of a team that can press on right to the end. You have to get it all together in any worthwhile effort, sports, business, or the United States Army. This is Pat Summerall saying so long for the United States Army and the National Football League. And thanks for the opportunity of bringing you this program.